What is up, guys? Delboy here. I wanted to make a quick prediction video for George Groves versus Jamie Cox. This fight goes down on the 14th of October and it is for the WBA super middleweight title held by George Groves, and it is also part of a World Boxing Super Series, and the fight goes down at Wembley Arena in London. Just a quick prediction video for this fight. Let's go through the records of both guys quickly. George Groves, we'll start with George Groves, the champion. He comes into this fight with a record of 26 wins, 3 defeats, 0 draws. 19 of those 26 wins coming by way of stoppage. Jamie Cox comes into this fight with a record of 24 wins, 0 defeats, 0 draws. 13 of those 24 wins coming by way of stoppage. So Jamie Cox comes into this fight with the unbeaten record, but he's never really been tested. And George Groves, he's got a few losses, but overall he's fought very good competition. He's won some, he's lost some, but he's very experienced and he knows what the top level is about. If we quickly look at the physical attributes of both guys, George Groves is listed as 5'11.5" with a 72-inch reach, and Jamie Cox is listed as 5'11". I cannot find Jamie Cox's reach anywhere, but from my eyes, to me, George Groves looks like he is the sort of rangier fighter with longer arms and longer limbs, and overall, to me, George Groves is a lot bigger than Jamie Cox. We saw that in the World Boxing Super Series conference when they had their face-off. George Groves looks significantly bigger. Broader shoulders, thicker all round, taller. He is just the bigger human being. And I actually think Jamie Cox might have turned pro at welterweight. So that goes to show, George Groves is the bigger man here. And on fight night, once they've rehydrated, I think he is going to have a sizable advantage in terms of weight. I really do. Groves is a big super middleweight, and I think that will tell on fight night. I think that's going to be a big factor here. If we look at both guys in terms of styles, to me George Groves is most effective when he uses that jab and he gets in a rhythm. To me, George Groves is a rhythm fighter. When he's in his rhythm, he is very effective. If he can dictate the range with his jab, that is when you're in trouble, because behind that jab is a very good right hand with a lot of power. And, he's a big puncher. So, to me, George Groves is a rhythm fighter. He's a boxer puncher. And when it's going well for him, he's very hard to beat. He does do things very well, but he does have his weaknesses, like we say. To me, Groves is a rhythm fighter. So, when you take him out of that rhythm, and when you make it tough on him, when you make him work, that's when he starts to come undone. That is when he starts to make mistakes. If you can make it a rough, tough fight, if you can sort of return fire, then George Groves is going to make mistakes. That's just the type of fighter he is. And if it's a long, tough fight, you have to question George Groves' gas tank. We've said that throughout his whole career, and it's still a question mark that hovers over him to this day. And Groves is just one of those fighters. He's not a glass cannon, but the blueprint is there. Everyone knows what that is. And to me, Groves is just one of those fighters where it always looks like he is one punch away from going into a crisis. That's just the type of fighter I think Groves is. He's vulnerable, but he's very dangerous. And he does have a lot of heart as well. So, the strengths of Groves are apparent, as are his weaknesses. To me, Jamie Cox, the question is, can he overcome the George Groves size advantage to ask those questions, to get up close, to work the body, to make it a rough fight? Can he do that? I'm not so sure, because I really think Groves is going to be so much bigger, and we've never seen Jamie Cox in there with somebody who can hit as hard as George Groves. Groves can crack. So it's all well and good saying, yeah, we know how to beat Groves, it's easy done. You've got to take shots to do it. Badou Jack took a lot of shots to beat George Groves. Watch that fight back, it was close. Other than the knockdown, there was nothing in it. Look at the first Froch fight. Froch had to take a hell of a lot of shots to win that fight. And even in the second fight, it wasn't easy. if you're going to try and make it a fight with George Groves, which is one of the ways you can beat him, you're going to have to take a hell of a lot of shots. And I just question whether Jamie Cox can deal with that. To me, stylistically, he does do things that could trouble George Groves. To me, Jamie Cox looks better on the inside. I've seen Jamie Cox up close, albeit against very low-level opposition. I've seen him work a body. He can sort of throw the uppercuts in close, hooks around the side. To me, he looks better and more comfortable in the pocket than George Groves. And I have to say, I've never rated George Groves' inside game. So if Jamie Cox could get on the inside, he could potentially have an advantage there. And that is an area where he could target. But having said that, although Groves can't fight on the inside, I go back to the size advantage. Maybe Groves is just strong enough to hold Cox and not let him do work. That is a possibility, because I think making it a fight is the only way Jamie Cox can win this fight. From what I see from Jamie Cox, he cannot box with George Groves. He's just not good enough to do it. And again, Groves is longer. His jab is better. He can't box with George Groves. He can't look for that one big shot, because I'm not sure Jamie Cox hits hard enough to put George Groves out in one shot. So to me, the only way Jamie Cox wins this fight is making it a dogfight, making it a rough and tough affair, getting on the inside, working the body, coming up through the middle with uppercuts. That's how Jamie Cox wins this fight in my mind. But I just highly doubt Jamie Cox can get past that George Groves jab. I don't think he can take that George Groves right hand away from him either. And when that right hand connects, I think it's going to do some serious damage to Jamie Cox. And I've questioned Groves' ability to handle a crisis in the past and even in this video, but if you followed Jamie Cox's career, you can say the same thing about him. There's been a couple of fights in his career where it's got hard, where it's got dirty, and he's had multiple point deductions and things of that nature. So, and they was in low-level fights. So how is Jamie Cox going to cope in a high-level event when the punches are raining in and maybe he's hurt? How is Jamie Cox going to cope with that? Because from what I've seen of his temperament in his career so far, I'm not sure it's going to go well for him. Ultimately, I'm picking a George Groves mid to late stoppage here. I just feel Groves all around is a better fighter, more experienced, bigger, hits harder, better jab, better long range boxing. He's better in most departments, to be quite honest, and I expect him to get a mid to late stoppage. Jamie Cox, I'm sure, is going to give it a go. He's going to let his hands go when he can, but I just feel he's going to be outgunned and outmanned here and outskilled. I think George Groves is just a better fighter. So I am picking a George Groves mid to late stoppage. For the gamblers out there, George Groves, when I taken him, was 6-4 to get the stoppage. So I felt there was really attractive odds, because ultimately Jamie Cox is the smaller man. He's never fought anybody close to this level. He's had trouble early on in his career against much smaller men at lighter weight classes. So I felt the George Groves by stoppage at 6-4 was a really good bet. And I'm pretty certain that George Groves is going to get the job done here. So I'm just to point that one out for you guys. But yeah, George Groves, mid to late TKO/KO. That is my prediction. What do you guys think? Peace.